Har moster Clara frågat efter mig?
Nej, hon har inte synts till ännu.
In 1934, she was an eager young newcomer to feature films. Soon she would be acknowledged as a talented beauty on her way to success.
I våren kanske. Våren.
Then came Hollywood, the awards, the glamour, the adulation of millions who claimed her as their star. But when her private life clashed with her public image, they turned on her. Deserted by her fans, publicly vilified, it seemed as if her career was over. However, she was never just a star. She was an actress, a great one, a courageous one. And that made all the difference. Her name was Ingrid Bergman.
She never had time to waste. I remember going to the cinema with her and suddenly she would whisper in my ear, I don't like this movie, I'm leaving. I don't have time to waste.
The important thing about her was that she never stopped working. She never just said, this is me and I can sell this. And that's enough.
I don't want to ride only limousines. I don't want to be only in hotel suites. I want to walk down the street and be the person who I really am. And this was the most important thing to me about her as a person, was that insistence on honesty and truth, and her feet always on the ground.
There have been many changes around Stockholm's Nybroviken. The ferries still run. The storefronts of the Strandvägen still remain. Here, Justus Bergman had a photography shop. And in this same stronghold of conventional middle-class respectability, he made his home. But there was a difference. For under the towered roof, he also kept his painting studio. And in this color-filled environment, his daughter Ingrid was born. Friedel, Ingrid's mother, had left her secure German background to marry Justus, a struggling artist. Of their 3 children, only Ingrid survived. Ingrid became the center of her father's life and the subject of movies made on each of her birthdays. Through him, she learned to view the camera as a friend. This shot was to be Ingrid's closest link with her mother. By the following year, filming took place at Friedel's graveside. A bohemian at heart, Justus raised his daughter to be a part of a formal, well-bred world. But every free moment, he encouraged all that was artistic and individual in Ingrid.
When I came to Ingrid, I was 18 age and Ingrid 9. And I think that her father wanted someone to be her older sister. And I think we was sisters. And she was very, very happy. Ingrid lived often in imaginations. She played princess, she was a dog, she was a cat, and she was singing much. And her father, he learned her very much. He wanted her to be a great opera singer. But she wanted to be an actress.
Ingrid would never need to be taught about grief or the briefness of life. At 13, she lost the father who believed her the most talented, the most beautiful of children. Her Aunt Ellen took Ingrid in, but she too died within months and in Ingrid's arms.
When Ingrid was 15 years old, I took her with me to film studio. I had a little role in a film there, and I thought perhaps she could have a little job extra too. And after she said to me, I must be a film star, she couldn't believe that they paid her because she was so happy.
Only 2 years later, Ingrid was to take the first major step towards her goal. Just yards from her childhood home was Stockholm's Royal Dramatic Theatre and its drama school. Here, such great players as Greta Garbo had studied. Ingrid applied for a scholarship to this distinguished institution, and happily she was accepted. Actor and director Frank Sundström was a fellow student.
She was a very different kind of person. This was at a time when women in this country were not supposed to have ideas of their own, but not so Ingrid. She got, I think, disappointed in the school because she felt that she didn't come forward early enough. She wanted to get into the work as fast as she possibly could. And that is the reason why she left the Royal Dramatic School to start to make films.
At 18, Ingrid had her first speaking part in The Count of the Monk's Bridge.
Gick de visst?
Vad menar ni med det här? Vad vill ni? Vem är ni?
Other roles followed quickly, leading parts. The star-struck adolescent was suddenly a movie actress. And for Ingrid, the joy of acting would never diminish. Praised for her gentle beauty, Ingrid began to yearn for greater challenge. She found it in a woman's face.
Varför skulle hon slippa undan så billigt? Åh nej. Så känner ni inte mig. Har hon inte allt en kvinna kan önska sig?
Viewers were taken aback at this Ingrid, coarse, disfigured.
Avgudad. Var hon inte vacker?
Jo, visst var hon vacker.
Och då så. Ska hon inte betala för det?
Meanwhile, an important event had occurred. She'd met a handsome dentist almost 10 years older than herself, and they'd fallen in love. At 21, Ingrid was married to Peter Lindström. And with the birth of their daughter, Pia, Ingrid's happiness seemed complete.
Vet ni vad ni påminner mig om?
Nej.
Jo, om en wienervals.
Intermezzo, the highly acclaimed film of an ill-fated love affair, resulted in world attention for Ingrid.
Då Wien ännu var en lycklig stad.
Ja, ni är ju poet.
Det blev man där nere. Den gången.
It also brought to Stockholm the woman who would become her agent and lifelong friend, Kay Brown.
Ingrid Bergman had come to our attention, and Mr. Selznick sent me to talk to her and to get a contract with her, if possible. It's a long time since I had that conversation, and as I recall it, we ended up with one picture and an option for another picture. In the meantime, I'd got to meet and know this lovely family. And I kind of worried as to whether or not this was a wise decision on her part. At any rate, that night we were walking in Old Town, and I had the courage to bring it up. I said, are you sure this is the right thing that you want to do? You've got a wonderful husband and a lovely baby, and you have all the work that you want. And she said, yes, it was, because she wanted challenges in life and work in life.
They wanted her to change her eyebrows. They wanted to change her teeth. They wanted to change her frisure. They wanted her to be something more in the Hollywood style. But Ingrid answered, I am Ingrid Bergman. That's my name. I'm going to keep it. These are my eyebrows. This is my mouth. These are my teeth. You have brought these teeth, these eyebrows, and my name over to your country. And if you're not pleased, I'm perfectly willing to leave.
After her first screen test, Selznick agreed that Ingrid's natural beauty should remain untouched. He was now convinced that radiant integrity should be Ingrid's permanent image.
I would like to have known you then.
Would you?
Ingrid's first Hollywood film, a remake of Intermezzo with Leslie Howard, launched this image onto the American public.
You see, ever since I first began to care about music, it seems strange.
What does?
I had only one idea. For years I saved every penny I could to be able to hear you whenever you played.
Did you? How nice of you to tell me that.
No, nice of me. Think of my being able to tell it to you. That's what I can't get over. Here I am talking to you as if you were an old friend.
Well, I'm a friend anyway.
But only a little while ago I looked at you from such a distance, and now you don't know how fantastic it seems to me to be here.
And so fantastic was the response to Ingrid that it took even David Selznick by surprise. By now he had signed her to a 7-year contract, giving him total control over her professional life. Being under contract meant waiting for the right part. And waiting was something Ingrid never did well. She therefore accepted a leading role in a Broadway play, Lilium, despite her meager theatrical experience.
Ingrid had magic. She had real magic. In fact, I used to tease her sometimes. She wasn't often nervous, but when she was, I used to say to her, darling, you can go on that stage and, you know, recite the telephone book backwards or forwards. They love you. They just love you. It's what's within you.
They loved her in Lilium. And they loved her in the film she made when Selznick lent her out to other studios.
Don't you want me here anymore?
One of these was Rage in Heaven, in which she played opposite Robert Montgomery.
Only when Ward went away, I lost you too. Now I'm all alone.
But you are not alone. We can still be happy together. I'll do anything you want. Listen, couldn't we go away together, right now? Oh, let's forget everything that's happened. We can't stay in this house. God, we can't stay in this house torturing each other. Let's put an end to it.
We will put an end to it. We two, together. Then I'll have you all to myself. At last. So easy. Don't be frightened. You know I wouldn't hurt you.
Selznick also brought me over to Hollywood, and there I met Ingrid, of course. We were very good friends, and I remember that she was very happy with her Peter and with her home and with her little child. She seemed to be very happy, but at the same time, I had a feeling that she wasn't quite satisfied with her work in Hollywood. Ingrid always hated what we call typecasting. She wanted to go beyond. She didn't want to be exactly a Hollywood cliché.
With Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Ingrid won her struggle to break out of the cliché. Her co-star was Spencer Tracy.
I forgot to mention, my friend and I are physicians.
Doctors? Oh, go on. Oh, I thought you were a couple of tops.
No. Have the leisure.
Oh, dear me. And here I thought...
Well, I'm glad to see you're not really hurt.
Oh, but I am, Doctor. Really?
Really? Maybe I better send you to the hospital, huh?
No. Oh, look. Here. Feel.
Here?
Oh,
Mm-hmm. Just as I thought. Cirrhosis pectoris.
What's that mean?
That means your eyes are twin pools of desire.
Oh, doctor. Oh, that's nice.
Well, I guess there wasn't a man that came within breathing distance of Ingrid that didn't fall in love with her. I had met her once having a malted milk on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, and she was sitting at this soda fountain, and I fell head over heels in love with her without ever saying hello.
She would come in very casually, sit down. Within 10 minutes, all of those men were absolutely hypnotized by her. And she did nothing for that. They knew instinctually from the age of 9 or 10 to the age of 80 that they were looking at woman.
By now, all of America was in love with a young Swedish woman who refused to go Hollywood. What started as just another studio production emerged as a highlight of Ingrid's career. For generations to come, these images would recall a movie classic and one of the great screen love stories of our time, Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart.
All right, I'll make it easier for you. Go ahead and shoot. You'll be doing me a favor.
Richard, I tried to stay away. I thought I would never see you again. That you are out of my life.
The day you left Paris, if you knew what I went through, if you knew how much I loved you, how much I still love you.
The part of Maria, the terrorized Spanish girl in For Whom the Bell Tolls, gave Ingrid the challenge she sought. For her role opposite Gary Cooper, she received her first Academy Award nomination. The film for which Ingrid won an Academy Award, Gaslight. It also starred Charles Boyer. Featured was a young English actress, Angela Lansbury.
Gaslight was my first motion picture in Hollywood, and I was extraordinarily lucky because I was signed to play a supporting role with the then new great Ingrid Bergman. Even then, even as young as I was absolutely struck by her extraordinary ability to convey a tremulous, transparent vulnerability on screen.
Come, Elizabeth, you must have answered a bell.
No one was here, sir, while you were out.
But Elizabeth, but you saw him. You opened the door for him yourself. Elizabeth, say it, Elizabeth, say it.
No, Mum. I didn't see anyone at all.
He was here. I know it. I know it. When he was here, I know it. I know.
You see how it is, Elizabeth.
Yes, sir. I see just how it is.
I couldn't have dreamed it. I couldn't have dreamed it. I couldn't have dreamed it. I couldn't have dreamed it.
stars really didn't bother to talk to supporting players a great deal in those days. You did your scenes with them, but she was interested, and she thought the part of Nancy was terribly funny, and she had the most infectious, marvelous laugh, and she enjoyed the scenes that we did together. She enjoyed the fact that here was I, a little 17-year-old upstart who had to put her down, and she was a very lovely, tall woman, and I happened to be very tall, too, although I was rather fat in those days, but they scooped me up on high lifts in my shoes so that I would tower over her. She was taller than Charles Boyer. We both were, and we used to have a lot of laughs about that. Charles was a most elegant, lovely, dear man, but he wasn't very tall, and they always used to say that if you worked with him, you had to walk in a ditch.
To the visitor from Sweden who took these movies, it must have seemed she had it all. Ingrid's achievement in just a few years was a fantasy come true. She had captured the very heart of America, and it seemed she could never, ever lose it.
You don't become a nun to run away from life, Patsy. It's not because you've lost something. It's because you found something. You're still a little girl. You don't know yet.
Oh, but I do. I just want to be like you.
You don't know what the next 4 years will bring. You haven't been to high school yet. Those are years you'll always treasure. New companions, new interests, lots of fun, as well as study. Going to parties, to football games, your first prom, your first party dress, your first waltz. You can't give up these things if you know nothing about them. Not until you've known all this and more. Can you say with complete understanding, I want to be a nun?
Audiences had put Ingrid on a pedestal, never quite asking if that was where she wanted to be.
Miss Bergman, I want to present you with this Look Magazine Award for being the best actress of this year.
To Americans, the honors heaped on Ingrid Bergman could not have found a more deserving recipient.
I hope I can continue to please them in the future.
Say, well, that's wonderful, and I know that you've played with most of the leading men here in Hollywood, and I like Gary Cooper and Gregory Peck and Bing Crosby. I wondered if you'd consider doing just giving me a job sometime.
Oh, yes, I would like to very much, Bob, but you see, I worked very hard to get where I am.
Yeah, I see.
The United States was at war, and Hollywood did its part. Ingrid addressed Bond rallies, toured bases and factories, and made a film for the Office of War Information, Swedes in America. And all the while, despite the public relations image of perfect happiness, her marriage was slowly coming apart. With Spellbound, David Selznick thought he had the ideal vehicle for his star. The director was Alfred Hitchcock. Playing opposite Ingrid, Gregory Peck.
Quite remarkable to discover that one isn't what one thought one was. I mean, I've always been entirely aware of what was in my mind.
And you're not, no?
Quite ridiculous. So stupid of me to come in here like a distracted child.
You're very lovely.
Please don't talk that way. You'll think I came in to hear that.
I know why you came in.
Why?
Because something has happened to us.
It doesn't happen like that. In a day.
It happens in a moment sometimes. I felt it this afternoon. It was like lightning striking. It strikes rarely.
In Notorious, director Alfred Hitchcock lightly challenged the motion picture code of his day regarding the duration of a kiss.
It's nice out here. Let's not go out for dinner.
Ingrid's co-star, Cary Grant.
We have to eat.
Well, you can eat here. I'll cook it.
I thought you didn't like to cook.
No, I don't like to cook. But I have a chicken in the icebox, and you're eating it.
What about all the washing up afterward?
We'll eat it with our fingers.
Shall we leave the plates?
Yes. One for you and one for me.
Do you mind if I had dinner with you tonight?
I'd be delighted.
Ingrid's contract with David O. Selznick had expired. Now she would be free to select her own parts, and they would not be simply carbon copies of her earlier successes.
When she became an independent producer, did Arch of Triumph and Joan of Arc, neither of which was successful, I believe it was in her search for growth as an artist. She wanted to dig out something deeply personal about Joan of Arc.
Men are governed by corruption. They like it.
Men hate corruption and God hates it.
I don't know, but men take to it very naturally.
Cannot be true. Why, King, have you taken money from our enemy?
That is not a question a king should answer or be asked.
Then you have done it. You have betrayed us. All of us.
Your country and even yourself. I shall tell the people of France what you've done. I hate war. I don't like battles. Every time I see French blood flowing, I can feel the hair rise on my head. With all my soul, I pray for peace.
Hollywood in those days glamorized everything, and they glamorized their stars. She would come out of battle with maybe one little smudge on her face, and immaculate armor, and her hair carefully groomed. And I think she herself didn't want that.
Despite Ingrid's misgivings, for her role as Joan, she again received an Academy Award nomination. But events would condemn any new Ingrid Bergman film to box office failure for years to come. Ingrid would always remember the first time she saw this Italian production. Its impact would soon overturn her life. The film, Rome, Open City. Its star, Anna Magnani. It was directed by a brilliant newcomer to the international film world, Roberto Rossellini.
Open City was the first picture he shot, and he had no script for it. He had ideas in his mind, very clear. He knew what he wanted. He didn't use professional actors except 2 or 3. Most of the people were what he wanted to see in the picture, and which he chose from people, ordinary people in the street. That was his way of working, and that was his way of improvising, as they call it in the United States, but that was the way he made pictures.
She spoke to me about Roberto Rossellini on a few occasions while we were shooting Joan of Arc, and she felt that working for him and with him would be an enormous step to get away from the glamorization of characters that occurred in Hollywood in those days. And having seen Magnani and Rome Open City and so on, she felt that this give her a chance to play a peasant, not a glamorized queen of celluloid.
She was praised for her performance as a tormented woman in Under Capricorn with Joseph Cotton.
Please be seated, gentlemen. I hope I'm not too late to take a glass of wine with you.
My wife, gentlemen. Lady Henrietta Flusky.
Sit down.
But more than ever, Ingrid viewed her recent efforts as obvious products of a studio backlot.
And of course, Hollywood was extremely glamorous at that time, and there were very big productions going on, and perhaps she got a little bored. I mean, she'd had a lot of lovely parts, but this man writing to her and saying, I want you to come and be in my film, was a great excitement to her. It was a new beginning, a new idea, and I think that's what made her feel that she would start again, which was very brave indeed, but then she was a very brave lady.
Ingrid came here to Italy, to Rome, in 1949. I was 16 at that time. And all Italy was make a big feast when Ingrid arrived. She was overwhelmed from love, I think, because they were not only the family who really loved her. It was very easy to love Ingrid because she was so natural. She was so a fantastic human being. But easy to say, but she was like that. It's not an exaggeration. She had a communication which we didn't expect from a Swedish person, because we know that they could have been very cool as character, and she was not. So really, love was in between us was very easy.
Ingrid was to star in a film called Stromboli. Production delays were only part of their problem. Rumors were spreading that Ingrid had fallen in love with Roberto Rossellini.
Houses, fields.
In true Rossellini style, there was no shooting script. And Mario Vitale, a local fisherman, was cast as Ingrid's husband.
Terra. Come si dice terra in inglese? New terra. See? We plant again. Barley, vines.
Leave me alone. I don't care about your barley, or your vine, or your new terror. I want to leave this island and go away, far away. Like all the others who lived here and were born here and went away, far away.
Ma che è successo?
Listen, this is my home. You're my wife. You stay here because I want to.
Now reports of Ingrid's pregnancy overshadowed the film and made world headlines. Quick exploitation followed. Robertino Rossellini was born shortly before Ingrid was free to marry his father. Pia would grow up in the custody of Dr. Peter Lindstrom. On March the 14th, 1950, Senator Edwin Johnson delivered a blistering attack on Ingrid. He accused her of abandoning her husband and child and declared that Ingrid Bergman should never again be permitted to set foot on American soil.
I believe that in America they had little statues, little heads of her as Joan of Arc, which she'd played, in some of the churches. And what happened, I think, is that when this broke, they took them out of the churches. And I can see her now standing, looking out of my window onto the road, and she was crying. She was really very upset about it altogether. And it's funny because nowadays, of course, all this doesn't mean anything, but they saw her as a Madonna, as somebody representing motherhood, and all these things that as actresses we act, but she represented these things to the world, and they felt let down, I suppose.
There was a lot going on behind the scenes in those days in Hollywood that the reigning arbiters of moral values, Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons, knew about, and with their favorites, they kept their mouths shut. When Ingrid, in her tremendous honesty, fell in love with Rossellini and declared she could no longer live with her husband because she was in love with another man, she was pilloried. The Virgin Mary of films had betrayed the image that they had built up about her, and she was crucified for being truthful and honest as she always was.
Although she was rejected by the United States, Ingrid set about building her new life. There was work, and there was family.
I lived with Ingrid since she arrived in Rome. And so I follow her when Robertino was born. Then the twins, Ingrid and Isabella. And I know that she was very unhappy because Pia was not with her. And I was warning her because grown-up people, they don't know how much children can suffer about things.
I visited Ingrid in Rome, and one day when I was with her, she received a letter from Pia. And I have never seen such happiness. She laughed and cried, and she was so happy. And when it was the first letter she had received, and I could understand that.
I'm sorry if I woke you up. I only wanted to know how the children are.
Ingrid would make 6 films with Rossellini, all box office failures. In Ferrer, she portrays a woman engaged in an illicit affair. Blackmailed, she resolves to commit suicide.
Listen, tomorrow morning, when the children wake up, you must take them in your arms. You must tell them. You must tell them how much I love them. So very, very much. No, Martha, nothing. Nothing is wrong. It's only very late. I don't know when I can come and see you. Martha, can you hear me? Stay with them, always. As you always stayed with me. Goodbye.
There was something always very positive, even in the moments when she was really suffering. And I met her when she was suffering in Italy, after all the pressures that were being put on her by America and the press, that she never lost that wonderful sense of hope.
People used to say that my uncle has ruined Ingrid's careers. And they say even that Ingrid has ruined his career. But what is career? Career is, to me, doesn't mean anything. I don't know what it means. If you get to a top, but you never get to a top in life, I think. And I think that my uncle thought the same thing. And Ingrid too. They were just changing experience. Is it you transform your ideas, you make a little revolution with yourself every time that you change and you choose something else. But career, you do less money maybe when this is career. The career can be that it can happen that you gain less money, so you have less respect from the other people. I don't think that this is the way that my uncle and Ingrid were thinking about life.
Oh, I knew him before I met you.
Were you in love with him?
No.
In Journey to Italy, Rossellini sought to build up audience appeal by engaging another Hollywood star, George Sanders.
I couldn't even visit him. For almost a year I didn't see him. Then on the eve of our wedding, the night before I left for London, I was packing my bags when I heard the sound of pebbles on my window. And the rain was so heavy that I couldn't see anyone outside. So I ran out into the garden, just was. And there he stood. He was shivering with cold. He was so strange and romantic. Maybe he wanted to prove to me that in spite of the high fever, he had braved the rain to see me. Or maybe he wanted to die.
How very poetic. Much more poetic than his verses.
I remember Ingrid being very surprised by the fact that Roberto directed the way he did direct. George Sanders was very, very upset by that way of shooting, and he told me personally that he thought he was going mad because of the way it was shot. And he called his psychiatrist in Hollywood 5 or 6 times and wanted to quit the picture. And he said, how the hell can I get out of it? But naturally, he could not get out of it.
When the financing of new films seemed impossible, Rossellini directed Ingrid in an oratorio, Joan of Arc at the State. They toured the opera houses of Europe, often as a family. Eventually, they reached Stockholm.
The Swedish critics were not very kind to her. One critic even said, this Rossellini family who runs around the world to show themselves for money. And that must have made Ingrid furious. I remember there was a big concert at the concert house here where she appeared, and she said, abroad, I am considered a good actress, but a bad person. Here, I'm considered a good person, but a bad actress. I think I'm neither the one or the other. I believe that you Swedes have difficulties in ever seeing one of your compatriots becoming larger than the other. And you know what the audience did? They stood up and applauded, and I was one of them.
Anyone who thinks that the Italian years were wasted years, perhaps that's not quite the word. I don't think they were. I think Ingrid learned an awful lot about living, a lot about Italians, a lot about love, a lot about hard work, a lot about failure, a lot about a lot of things she never knew before. And I think that she grew very much as a result of all the hardships that she went through during the Italian years. And I honestly do not think that she felt that they were wasted years or anything because they weren't successful years in accordance with what Hollywood thought were successful. I think in retrospect, she grew up during that period.
The strains of their lives were having an effect, and now the lovers who had made world headlines were drifting apart. Ingrid took her career into her own hands when she decided to star in Jean Renoir's Paris Does Strange Things. But it would be completely overshadowed by the film that followed.
They wanted to hear my opinion of what the situation was now with Miss Bergman. I was a little huffy about that, but nonetheless I went, and I sat at this great big board table at 20th Century Fox and told them that I thought that Miss Bergman was very, very well suited to Anastasia, and that they would be very lucky if they got her. And as far as her conduct was concerned, I did not take care to discuss it. I thought that she should gab the picture on the merits of the fact that she was a great actress, and I got up and left. P.S. 20th Century Fox did okay the picture.
You want to find the family to whom you belong, don't you?
Ingrid's co-star was Yul Brynner.
By yourself, you're lost. But with me, you will find yourself.
Please, I'm tired.
You know I'm right. The album. Take the chances, the only one you have.
I'm too tired to argue.
You don't have to do anything. I will do it all. Now here, look. It's you on the deck of your father's yacht.
The Standard.
Standard? You know the name?
It's written on the lifeboat.
Oh, yes. Now, here you are with your family. Your father the Tsar, your mother, your sisters, your little brother.
My family.
And here, look. 1913, the anniversary of the House of Romanov. 300 years. There they are, on the balcony of the Winter Palace. Sergei Pavlovich Bunin, General of the Cherkess Regiment, former aide-de-camp, attached to the person of His Imperial Majesty Nicholas II, Tsar of all Russia.
And I am Her Imperial Highness, the Grand Duchess Anastasia Nikolaevna.
For her role as Anastasia, the woman restored to her rightful place, Ingrid would win her second Academy Award. It would mean a comeback in more ways than one.
Now, I know that she's a controversial figure, so it's entirely up to you. If you want her on our show, I wish you'd drop me a note and let me know to that effect. And if you don't, if you think it shouldn't be done, you also let me know that too, because I say that it is your decision, and I'd like to get your verdict on it. I think, a lot of you think that this woman has had 7.5 years, you know, she's had 7.5 years of time for penance. Others may not think so, but whatever you think.
Whatever Ed Sullivan's audiences thought about Ingrid, one thing was certain. When she flew in to pick up the New York Film Critics Award, the reception was more than she had expected. The reporters were waiting, but there was also a group of loyal fans from the days when she played in Joan of Lorraine at New York's Albin Theater.
We would go every Saturday afternoon and every Wednesday matinee to see her come in and come out. And as the weeks progressed, she got to know us and recognize us. And she'd stop and talk to us, giggle with us, show us pictures of Pia, postcards she might have gotten, a drawing, something like that. Ingrid was returning to the States, finally, after her exile. Well, now we're adults, more or less. The 2 or 3 of us could get together with the original group. And the only thing we thought would be some kind of impact was to make some placards, welcome her back, trying to get as big a group together to make as much noise as we could to distract maybe any negative approach the press might have as she appeared for the first time. Her plane arrived back. 20 minutes later, Ingrid appeared at the door, and we started our screaming and jumping and carrying on until we were recognized. When the press saw this demonstration and the sincerity that was there, they definitely changed their approach, their reception of her. Ingrid, at the end, was received with the respect that she deserved.
Miss Bergman, did you have any criticism of the way the press in general handled the story of your life in the past year?
Oh, sure, I had some criticism of it, because I think the person has to have a private life, but I also know that if you choose being an actress, you have to take both sides of the coin. So, there it is.
Looking back on it, do you have any regrets about anything that you've done in the last few years, Miss Bergman?
No, I have no regrets at all. I regret the things I didn't do. Not what I did.
Such as some of those?
No, I think my life has been wonderful because I have done what I felt like. I have never. I was given courage, and I was given a sense of adventure, and that has carried me along. And then also with a sense of humor and a little bit of common sense, it has been a very rich life.
While Ingrid was appearing in a play in Paris, she and Pia had their first reunion after 6 long years of separation. It was made a media event. More such media events followed when Ingrid, now living in France, was divorced from Rossellini and was sued for custody of their children. Agreement was finally reached. And Ingrid Bergman, with increasing visits from a grown Pia, had all her children together at last.
It struck me as very funny that here was Ingrid, my client, in Paris, Swedish, and here also was Lars Schmidt, my client for America, Swedish, and they didn't know one another. So I was not only Ingrid's agent, I played Cupid in this situation. I introduced them to each other. It took, because not too long afterwards, she became Mrs. Lars Schmidt.
Indiscreet starred Ingrid opposite an old friend, Cary Grant. In it, she again revealed her fine flair for romantic comedy.
If you're willing, I'm willing. The last 2 days never happened.
What do you mean?
I mean, we'll go on as before.
And not be married?
That's right.
Well, that's the most improper thing I ever heard.
What?
I can hardly believe my ears.
But what are you so shocked about?
I didn't think you were capable of it.
What is different?
We are not married.
We weren't before.
But you didn't know I wasn't married.
You knew.
I knew you didn't know. What's the matter with you? How could you ask me to do such a thing? Hadn't you been following what I've been saying? Oh, I tell you, women are not the sensitive sex. That's one of the great delusions of literature. Men are the true romanticists. What are you crying about?
Oh, shut up, Phil.
Don't cry, Anna. I love you. Everything will be all right. You'll like being married. You will. You'll see.
Time was passing, but Ingrid's beauty remained.
Danger, you or any soldier. This way we have nothing to hide if we're caught. I can explain who we are and where we're going.
You're given a chance to explain, if the journey doesn't kill you.
No. No, I think this journey was meant for me. Lena, I think this is why God wanted me to come to China. To get these children out.
Ingrid became a legend, I believe, because she lived. We knew about her. Her face was a lived face. Her face was everything she had lost, everything she had laughed, everything she had experienced. And it was a real face. It was the sum of who Ingrid was in a way.
Looking at her because she was so beautiful, so incredible, I said, Ingrid, what kind of exercises do you do? I mean, like creams or, what have you? And she said, why does everybody ask me? I don't exercise. I'm not interested in exercise. I never exercised. I'm too lazy. She said, I like to swim. That's it.
The visit presented Ingrid in a new kind of role. A woman intent on vengeance. However, changes had been made since the original play. Ingrid's co-star and the film's co-producer, Anthony Quinn.
I had bought the property. The property was really mine. And my first choice, of course, to play the part was Ingrid. And at first, she was going to play it as the old lady. But somehow, she got scared of playing the old lady, and she wanted to play it a little more glamorously. She gave up the wooden leg and so forth.
It was important for me that you knew you were the first.
We were both so young.
I don't know whether you believe me or not. It was hard for me to pretend. I was too much in love with you. I think I screamed. I remember how surprised I was that those damn gypsies were still playing. And then you married Matilda Kovac. Her father owned the general store.
Lucky for you I did, Carla. You would have been stuck in Gullen, living a miserable life with me.
Instead, I went to Trieste, where I met Mr. Zaganatian in a whorehouse.
I think that Ingrid seduced, I don't mean physically, she just seduced people. She was a great seductress. And sometimes to a fault, because I think that sometimes she seduced people so much that they would give in to her. I mean, for instance, you're talking about I should not have given in to that seduction in the visit. I should have insisted on the plays the thing, that the subject as written was the importance. But the thought of working with Ingrid was so fantastic that I was seduced into doing what she wanted.
Plays, films, television dramas, some produced by Lars Schmidt, Ingrid's passion for work was unceasing. But she had not performed before an American audience since she had left Hollywood for Rome and Rossellini 18 years earlier. Now, with some apprehension, she agreed to appear in more stately mansions. Also in the play, Colleen Dewhurst.
She was going to open a theater, the Amundsen, a new theater, in the very center of the place that she had been a queen.
and where they had abruptly, and as usual without sense, had banished her. It was not treated as a play opening. It was treated as a news event. I think it was then I began to realize what Ingrid had to be going through. She and I were sitting together, and they asked to interview Ingrid. Ingrid, I don't think, even realized she had a hold of my hand, and she just was squeezing it. Later, they told me that on the news, they just went down to the two hands, holding on. That opening night, she knew, would be thronged with people that she had played with, the great leading men and leading women of the world, the great producers.
Some opening night with us.
I hope you understood my card today, did you?
No, thank you. I haven't had time to thank you for anything.
No, but
Thank you,
didn't I
Samantha.
give you
Well,
have
you
been
said
so
something.
read.
Yes, I'll read it again. I remember it was something funny, but...
Best wishes for a faulty stocking.
Yes, that's what they
You know what that is? Long run.
When we did opening night was incredible. There was such an applause when she entered. A welcome home.
That welcome was made official when in April 1972, Senator Charles Percy paid a long overdue tribute to Ingrid Bergman. To the American public, she will always hold a place in our hearts as one of the greatest performing artists of our time.
She loved acting. I think that she tried many, many parts, some of which she probably shouldn't have played. We all do that. Nevertheless, she never stopped. And she once said to me, you know, we all think we're exhausted and that we have to go and have a long, long rest. She said, but I've spent probably 2 weeks in my island off the coast of Sweden. She said, I'm ready to go back to work again. And I said, yes, it's absolutely true, isn't it?
If you think that you're going to strand me in this ghastly hotel, the hors d'oeuvres are dreadful and my bedroom is an icebox, you are making a very big mistake. You do not requisition my car, is that understood?
I'm sorry, but I must join my group.
Well, take a taxi.
Taxi?
Well, take a horse then. We'll steal somebody else's car. Let us talk about more important things.
Her career had spanned 4 decades. She had worked under a studio system, she had been an independent producer, and for 7 years had made films in Italy. Then she had returned.
Well, you're certainly blossoming out.
Doctor, you once compared me to my cactus plant. Well, ever so often, that prickly little thing puts out a flower that some people think...
Through it all, her love for her craft had never diminished. The joy of acting.
Oh, you're terrific.
They would always remain devoted friends. But now, Ingrid's 17-year marriage to Lars Schmidt was over. Career demands had exacted their price.
Miss Olsen, how long have you been interested in religion?
From 5 years.
In 1973, Murder on the Orient Express was released. For her performance, Ingrid won her 3rd Academy Award.
And I saw Jesus in the sky with many little children. But all the children were brown. So it was a sign for me to look after little brown babies.
Yes. Were your parents religious?
They had no respect for God, you know. So it was not just a sign. It was also a punishment.
The picture's producer, Richard Goodwin.
On the picture, all the way through it, Ingrid was working in a play, and she was incredibly professional. I mean, she was never late, she always knew her lines. In fact, she was absolutely astonishing in that respect. And it's only just recently that I've learned that she was, in fact, ill. In fact, ill of the disease that she died of subsequently. It's something that I would never have known, and I don't believe anybody on the crew knew it, because as producer, I think I would have heard about it. I think it's astonishing that she was able to keep this to herself and never at any time to let it affect her performance.
If possible, I think I admired the woman more than the actress. I admired this woman who had gone through so much in life, and at this point when we started the film, already was marked by her illness, by cancer, but nobody knew about it. It was never talked about. Ingrid came first, before anybody else, to the studio. She was the last to leave. And even when she had to do things like lying on the floor and put her arms back over her head, which I'm told later is very hurtful after the operation she had had. She never said, I can't do that, I'm not well. Ingrid took her arms, put them behind her head, and did her part.
You were unfaithful.
Absolutely not. I was entirely truthful and above board with Papa. I was attracted to Martin at the time and lived with him for 8 months. You don't think that affair was any bed of roses?
Well, it was I who had to remain with Papa every night. It was I who had to console him. It was I who, despite everything, kept repeating that you really did love him and that you really were coming back. It was I who had to open up your letters and read them out loud. Long, loving, amusing letters, which you told us choice bits about your interesting travels. We'd both sit there like foolish idiots. And how many times we'd go through your letters. We thought there wasn't anyone more special than you.
Eva, you hate me.
Many people, I think, believe that Autumn Sonata, since it was a film about a career woman who had a child, but for a long time also traveled and attended her career, was a film about Ingrid, her life. Obviously, it was not. Autumn Sonata was written by a man. It was a man's view of how a career woman maybe has a lot of guilt for leaving the child at intervals, for mistreating the child by the very fact of her leaving. I don't think Ingrid felt that. I know she didn't feel that this script was her words. I think Ingrid took pride in what her work had been, and she took pride in the way she had been a mother, and I think she took pride in the way she had loved. I think Ingrid believed that a person can have many roles, and you don't have to do all of them to perfection to feel you're doing right. Ingrid had a wonderful way of never looking back at mistakes she had done, you know, shivering with her mouth and feeling bad about it. She would look back and smile and laugh. Sometimes she would have anger, but the anger would never be malicious. The anger would just be, I could have taken that bastard. And she would, you know, laugh. I think it's her laughter I remember the most. You know, the room would just fill up with laughter.
In 1981, Ingrid appeared in a television production, A Woman Called Golda.
Well, if I'm supposed to be the mother of Israel, Earth Mother, or whatever kind of mother, I have the responsibility to be a good one. And what a good mother would say to you now is, it's late, everybody's tired, go home. Mr. President, I'll say good night.
Good night, dear lady. I hope we see each other again soon.
I'm glad you came.
I'm glad too.
So, let me ask, what took you so long?
For her performance, Ingrid received an Emmy posthumously. It was accepted by her daughter, Pia Lindström.
I know that she would be very proud of this award tonight because of what it meant to her to film it. And I'm very grateful to be here to be able to thank each and every one of you for this final tribute to my mother. She will live in my heart forever. Thank you.
It has been said that a great actor never worries about where the key light is, that the light is inside of him. Very few actors have the light inside of him. I think Ingrid glowed from inside. She carried her light inside. She treated success and failure as both imposters, and she somehow knew that she could exist on any level, and that she could live on any level, and that this radiance that came from inside would never go out, and it never has gone out.
Even that moment when she told me very simply that she was ill in Pia's apartment, and I knew what she was saying and got up and went over to her, it was dealt again with a great simplicity and a great honesty of what she had done in her life, what she stood for. Before our time, she had loved the men that she wanted to love. She had had the children she wanted to have. She was grateful she had grandchildren, and it did not dismay her that she had them. She had done, by then, the movie with Liv Ullmann. She would go on then to do Gold in My Ear. She would end her life with the people she loved around her on her birthday with great affection and giving them the understanding that she would rise again tomorrow, but also with the understanding and the honesty that she was going to go and it was all right.
A week before she died, Ingrid returned to Stockholm. It was a time for saying goodbye to old friends. It was a time for remembering.